What's going on, guys? Gilly Writes Comics is here, writer and co-creator of Galactic Rodents of Mayhem. You can check my website at gillywritescomics.com to stay up to date with the latest Grom news and when my next campaign will be dropping. So it's been a while since I've done a video. I just want to say that it has been super hectic in my neck of the woods. I got two young kids. I got a 4-year-old and a 9-month-old, and my house is bananas. Every single day, my house is literally bananas, bonkers, hectic, you name it. So it's very hard to have some time where I can just sit down and just share my thoughts or share what I'm working on. But I will be more consistent, especially in this video. I'm going to be looking at the Rippaverse and how there is a way to make your own way. It won't be easy. It's definitely a grind, but it is also worth it. Hard work definitely pays off. And I just want to take a look into the Rippaverse. Let's go. All right, so here we got Rippaverse ISOM #1 campaign. This looks like a crowdfunded platform. It's basically the Rippaverse. Eric D. July, who's a YouTube influencer. I believe he's been doing his own channel for a long time. He's been building up his channel. He's very savvy when it comes to comics. He's well read. He's been following the game for a long time, and he's also covered a lot of things in the political spectrum. I know where there's a lot of people that say don't talk about politics. Eric D. July will share his thoughts and his ideals, and he's not going to be subtle about it. So he built a nice following, and I want to say about a few days ago, he launched his ISOM first issue campaign. And if we just look at the numbers, they're just incredible. Right off the bat, his campaign goal was 100 grand. He has trailblazed past 1 million. He's heading into the $2 million range for an indie comic. That's unprecedented. That's incredible. He has over 20,000 backers. That's just insane. Major props to him. Kudos to him. Congrats, because that's a success story, and it's not an overnight success story. That's a grind, and it shows you how to do things the right way, the Ripple way, right? He built, like I said, he built his audience. He directed them not to a crowdfunding campaign, not to a Kickstarter, not to an Indiegogo, where they take 10% or whatever from the cut of if he would crowdfund. He literally directed his audience to his own website. That is just a brilliant. That's an alpha move that is incredibly done, well executed, well thought out. And again, much props to him, because he's showing a blueprint of how you can get things done on your own way. Now, granted, it's not going to be easy. As someone like myself who's been crowdfunding his own comics for almost a decade, it's hard when you crowdfund, because you're dealing with algorithms. If I put my comic on Kickstarter, it doesn't generally jump right up to #1 on Kickstarter. Like, hey, this just came out. There's algorithms at play. There's also Kickstarter has what they call Kickstarter selects or Kickstarter picks. So that there's traffic that gets drawn just to these titles that would be selected. So as a brand new title that comes in, it's very hard for organic people to come on the Kickstarter campaign and find your work. The same with Indiegogo, it's algorithms. So it's helpful when you have your own little audience. And of course, someone like Eric D. July, who's been YouTubing for a long time, who's an influencer, who has cachet, who definitely amassed and curated a great audience. If you figure he has 400,000 YouTube subscribers, 20,000 people purchased, that's just a small percent, but you just see the dividends right there. Making indie comics is not easy. I don't think, if we look a little closer at this campaign, he's charging $35 for the book. I will be supporting this. I definitely want to read it and see how well the story is. It's a 96-page book, so charging $35 with shipping. I think if it maybe be $10 shipping. So with tax, you're looking close to $50. Marvel and DC, the big two, Image, Dark Horse, they're not charging that price for their 100-page books. But again, they're mainstream. You get what I'm saying? They operating on a whole different scale as an indie creator like Eric D. July. So charging this amount, I believe, is great. I believe he could even get away with charging $40, even 45. But again, 35 is fair. But again, the man has to make some money because he has to finance the art team. He has to finance the printing, the shipping. Uh, Let me tell you something. The hardest thing some might think is just to raise money. That's very hard and that's very stressful. But let's be for real. For people who crowdfund and who know what I'm talking about, the hardest part is the fulfillment because you have to be on top of the printing. You have to be on top of your team. Let's get the files done in time. If you're printing, if you're crowdfunding a book that's being produced as it's being made, much how I crowdfunded Grom Volume 1 on Indiegogo. I had the team. I didn't have the finances to make a 100-page book. And when I did my campaign, I charged 25, I think, for our 100-page book, which in hindsight can't do that because again, I'm not DC, I'm not Marvel, I'm not making that kind of overhead where I can charge $19.99 on a book. If you think of, Marvel, DC, mainstream publishers, a lot of units, they're moving multiple thousands of units on big hits titles. So it's a whole different structure. But I want to give major props to Eric D. July. This campaign is nothing short of phenomenal, groundbreaking, trend setting, whatever you want to call it. Now, if we look at the artwork hands down looks amazing. Okay. We look at the short story. Avery Silverman is a common rancher, but that wasn't always the case. After obtaining some unique abilities, Avery spent a brief stint being a hero under the moniker Isom in the city of Floral Park, Texas. Realizing that it wasn't for him, he walked away from this life, but after responding to a call from his sisters, some violent altercations ensue and has Avery reconsidering his approach. What happened? Grab Isom number 1 to find out. Now, I'm going to say this right here because this is the storyteller in me. The wording here could be done a little bit better. And just looking at Isom, again, the artwork is amazing. A superhero named Isom, it doesn't hit me, doesn't grab me. However, what grabs here is the artwork, and what grabs here is that we have a trailblazer, we have a renegade who is going outside the margins of mainstream to produce their own comic. And that is something to be applauded and commended. And I'm buying into this hype. I want to see what this book is about. And I pray that it lives up to the hype because that's hard. It's very hard. I mean, if you have a great book, again, a finished book doesn't mean it's a great book. If you generate 2 million, 3 million, that doesn't make it a great book. What makes it a great book is when you read the book and you enjoy it and it's something that you remember and you want to talk about over and over and over again. The cover is phenomenal. Like I said, the cover looks beautiful. The artwork is done. He got an amazing team on this. And he has a lot of different different perks here. He has a signed book, which I'm with that. I'm with charging a little bit more for your signed book because again, we're not mainstream. We're operating outside of a mainstream level. So you definitely gotta charge something. We have different cover options. We got posters. The campaign looks beautiful and there's a lot of options and there's definitely potential here to see how far this Rippaverse goes. Again, the hardest part is living up to the hype because again, if people love it, you got to keep on going. That's a lot of pressure. Hopefully Eric D. July will pace himself, will take his time and will keep on trailblazing because not only is he opening the eyes for people who are hating on his stuff, he's also opening the eyes for people who align with his vision. I, for one, am a comic book creator, and I was always told, if you make a good book, if you make a good story, it will get out there. And sadly, that is not the case. We live in a day and age where there's heavy gatekeeping through mainstream publishing. There's a big control there. And I'm someone who's had a book that had a distributor, not a publisher. And even then, I've had issues with how my book was being handled, and we had to amicably part ways with my distributor. Because again, publishing on a mainstream level, it's not easy. Not to say that there's people who have made good work and made it through publishing. Hey, my hat's off to you, because it can be done. But the overwhelming majority, like the 99.99996% of mainstream publishing, is controlled and dominated a certain way, and certain ideals, certain groupthink mentality is what allows certain writers to stay writing 20 different books, to write DC, Marvel, this and that. But we don't see a raw, natural, scouting of indie talent to write new books. Is this something we don't see? And that's why when I see people like Eric D. July doing their thing, making their own book, it's something to behold, and it's definitely something to, just get behind and support, because it's not easy. It's definitely not. And people in the Comicsgate movement, I know Comicsgate has had a lot of hate energy towards it. Oh, Comicsgate is just a hate group. It's just let me tell you, it's just people that want new books and that are tired of seeing iconic heroes, being trashed, being bastardized. And sometimes you just want to see new stuff. I salute people like Eric D. July. When you think about the Comicsgate movement, you think about people like EVS who've built a sort of movement that's outside of mainstream. I love that. I love that, because I'm someone who doesn't have a name, except I just do my own comics, but I haven't had that success. And all I thought was, hey, if you get published, if it will open that door. And not to say that it won't open that door, but to fall into that, you know, to fall into that space where you'll be featured, where you'll be put out there in mainstream publishing. It's a very small window, and there's a lot of politics and bureaucracy that govern those spaces. The origins of comic books was steeped into some politics. Captain America fighting against the Nazis in World War II. I get all that, and I understand that. But at the same time, throughout our history of comic books, we have seen stuff that has transcended, and we have seen an evolution of storytelling. And I think comics is an evolution of storytelling. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, what do you get when you open a comic book? A plethora of comic book panels, right? A bunch of panels that tell the story. So how many words do you fill in a regular comic? And when we are, skewed towards a certain agenda, and there's a certain sway, political sway that overtakes comics to the point where it's too on the nose. So it's like a sledgehammer to the bridge of your nose. Like, I can't enjoy my stories. So guys, if you are out there and you support indie comics, thank you so much. You don't understand how important your support is. You guys will ultimately create the wave, because if you guys aren't supporting creators like Eric D. July, you guys aren't supporting indie creators like myself, nothing will grow. And I think one of the best ways to rival mainstream comics is where we have this movement keep on getting bigger. And I'm not saying just the big people in this movement getting bigger. I'm talking about people that have shown they are worthy with the comics that they do, also spreading the love. The more successful indie comics become, the more widespread we see movements like Rippaverse, Comicsgate, outside of mainstream. What we're doing is we're challenging. We're saying, hey, there is a market for these type of comics that are just about storytelling, comics that aren't agenda based, comics that are about the evolution of stories, right? Just creating a story, creating something that people want to draw to and support. Because that's what we, a lot of people that support comics, they grew up on comics and they just want to see good stories. They just want to see great stuff and they want to support it. So, guys, Gilly Writes Comics here, just talking a little bit about the Rippaverse and just how amazing that ISOM #1 campaign is. Please support indie comics. That's the only way our movement will grow. That's the only way. If you get tired of seeing, listen, I'm not going to lie. I mean, there's things that I grew up on, and I'll just see reboots upon reboots, regurgitations. You're just seeing like this rehashing. You're seeing a lack of innovation and a lack of creativity in storytelling, in filmmaking, in TV shows. It's not everywhere. But I'm just saying, like, when you watch something and you're like, it's like, yeah, like, maybe you shouldn't be watching it. Maybe you should take that energy, support an indie comic, support an indie project, because nothing will ever succeed without your support. Thank you all who supported Gilly Writes Comics and my work. I appreciate y'all. So definitely check out my website at gillywritescomics.com. I want to thank you guys again for checking me out. If you like what you see, definitely subscribe to my channel, share it out. The more subscribers I get, it just helps me in growing my brand. And I eventually want to pay it forward to the point where I can give and showcase other smaller indie creators to just keep the love going and the comic book storytelling flowing. Anyway, guys, till next time, geek out.